Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France, of course. You good old boys in Canada, we love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful January the 23rd, 2020. Guando Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, everything in the sports world is bigger and better in the South. We got the Super Bowl happening in the South in 10 days. We just came off a national championship in college football about 10 days ago. And then we had the debut of Zion Williams in the NBA last night with the New Orleans Pelicans.
Yeah, well, on the West Coast, we have the Pacific Ocean, and the sun always sets on the West Coast. Big C, I want to say Big C Sports is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our national sponsors on podcast and TV. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the stick, and he will do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you gotta have a smart TV. Big C, why do they discriminate against smart or dumb TVs? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, for a person like me, I need a smart TV because I need the TV to tell me what I'm doing right and wrong, and if I'm watching the wrong program.
Yep.
So, I mean, the TVs that I have in my home are smarter than me because they talk to me, they listen to me.
Yep.
So I'm a little nervous sometimes when I go to sleep if they're going to come up and look at me.
I was in an appliance store just the other day, and the sales clerk said, "Would you like to buy a smart TV?" And I said, "Well, which one of the other TVs, Big C?" He said, "Oh, those are the ones we're trying to get rid of, too." Anyway, it's all fair and level war. I don't think that's a good sales slogan. We got smart TVs and dumb TVs. Which one do you want to buy to put in your house? I want to make sure that people understand we do have a national suicide hotline, and we want to make sure that people need help when they need help. They need more than thoughts and prayers. Anyone who's ever served this country, let them know there's help. It's 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. That's also, you can text at 838-255. And that's 838-255. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, as we look at the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, knowing that it's there for all Americans, but especially our service members, Charlton, who have served so admirably protecting this country, when they come back home, they don't always have the support services that they need. And unfortunately, we're losing some 19 veterans a day to the horrific disease of called suicide. And when you think about mental illness, Charlton, mental illness does not discriminate against anybody, race, gender, age. So the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, is that outreach. But even more so, need to find a way to get a phone in every one of those veterans' hands. Many of them are homeless, so that they have access to be able to call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton. It should be a national cry for everyone to have a phone to be able to reach that number.
That's so true. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or they can text 838-255. That's 838-255 and get some help. I remember growing up watching a lot of television and listening to radio, mostly radio growing up. It's amazing how we're doing the Big C Sports Show now. There was a commercial that I was just reminded of today. I remember this dealership. He would say, "I will stand on my head to make you a deal." And that was about 35 years ago. I was a young boy, but I still remember it. There's been probably 1,000 commercials since then that I just don't remember. But I remember the one saying, "I will stand on my head to make you a deal." So we're asking people also with that hotline. There's a lot of veterans that have really put their lives on the line to give us a chance to have a good deal in the United States. So I hope they can reach out and get some help. Big C, I want to ask you this thing that we get into in the world of sports And we wonder how TV and radio is so big, and we're going to talk about, how people own things compared to renting things, whether it's owning a home or buying a home, owning a car or buying a car, owning a business or working for somebody else's business, and it all takes money and connections. But you believe how the Supreme Court, and you were talking about this just a couple of years ago when we started Big C Sports, how they opened up betting, and people can take money out of their pocket and try to make a quantum leap in their investment. Super Bowl betting, 23 million Americans. I know it's more than that. This is probably the legal side. 23 million Americans, they bet on Super Bowls. With $6 billion was bet last year, and that's in the United States alone. Now, allegedly, there's about 150 million people that watch the Super Bowl, some form of fashion. So to say 23, million of those people bet on it in some form of fashion makes sense. But they're all talking about whether they bet on stats, power ratings, Big C, and prop betting is also in there. It's amazing. The Supreme Court, those guys make money too. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, betting on sporting events is nothing new in America or even around the world. The Super Bowl has always been the number one betted on sporting event in America because it's a one-day event, Charlton. It's not like basketball, hockey, or baseball,
right,
where you have a culmination of games. This is all the marbles over a 3-hour span of 60 minutes throughout the game. And so it creates a lot of interest. And when you put up over 100 different prop bets for the game, Charlton, then you can bet on anything. And a lot of those prop bets have paid off over the years on individuals. Coming from the coin flip, that's the first prop bet that starts, Charlton.
Yeah.
The coin flip. And then every one from there, which, will you defer, will you take the ball, first pass, first rush, all the stats that you can think about in a football game is there. So it's an opportunity for the sports books to get big on that day financially, Charlton, because as an individual, you can't figure out all these things. Everything is a chance when you place a financial bet on something. There's not too many things that are for sure. And if it is for sure, then the odds of you making money are going to be decreased as far as the payout.
Yeah, and that's the legal side, Big C. We haven't talked about the guys that buy dumb TVs compared to smart TVs. I really realize it's about how you use words. So we talk about prop betting. And I'm not a bettor. I just listen to guys who talk about it and how much they win. They never tell you how much they lost. They only tell you when they win. It's like you go to some of these real estate seminars or some seminar where they're trying to sell you lotion or whatever, and they bring across the guy that made $200,000 because he found enough people to put into it. They don't tell you about the guy that's fifth place on the team, how he made nothing. And some of these prop bet people are the same. The record versus the spread, San Francisco versus the spread, is 11 wins, 6 losses, 1 tie. Kansas City versus the spread is 12 wins, 5 losses, and 1 tie. So Kansas City's won more versus the spread. And for prop betting people, the spread is Kansas City's favored by 1. Now, how does that make sense to a guy that doesn't care about the spread, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, in reality, the spread is going to be irrelevant to the Super Bowl. It's not going to come down to a field goal, Charlton. This game is going to be decided, and it's going to be one-sided when you look at the outcome of this game. You go into the Super Bowl, realistically, you're looking at 2 of the top 10 defensive teams in the playoffs participating in this game.
Yeah.
If you're basing it just based on numbers. But you also got to look at the opponents that each one of these teams are playing. You look at from Kansas City's perspective, I think Kansas City was facing 2 teams that were better offensively than what San Francisco was facing going into this game. When you look at the teams that San Francisco faced, and everybody will talk about how great their defense was, but both of those offenses were very inept. They were not able to put points on the scoreboard. Both of those quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins, looked very skittish. It looked like the moment was too big for them.
Yeah.
But when on the flip side, when you look at Kansas City, they had to come from behind against 2 teams. They had to fight back from a lot of adversity, which I think gives the team a lot of fortitude going into this Super Bowl when you think that this is a team that they were not rattled from being behind.
No, not at all.
San Francisco's not been put into that point. So I think that's the real testament as we look at Super Bowl 54 coming up. If San Francisco goes behind in this game, can they come back like Kansas City has been able to do in their first 2 playoff games?
They want Garoppolo to throw the ball. A lot of people say, why would you want a guy making a $137 million contract to throw the football? Because coaches know the weaknesses of a team, and that's what Shanahan knows too. That's why he's had less than 20 passes in 2 playoff games, and people can say what they want to say, but coaches know what they're doing. If you look about the playoff record, the records versus playoff teams, the 49ers are 5-2, the Chiefs are 5-3. Their strength of schedule rank, 49ers 12th strength of schedule, Kansas City 13. But this is what I also look at. When you look at points per drive on the offense, the Niners they average like, for 4 drives, they score on every 4th drive. The Chiefs score every 2nd drive, Big C. This cannot be a 1-point game, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I look at it as not so much that they don't want Garoppolo to throw the ball. I look at that Kyle Shanahan has learned from his errors of the past. If you remember back in 2016, he was in the Super Bowl against the New England Patriots.
Yeah.
He's refused to run the ball in that game, Charlton. He got pass happy with Matt Ryan. Even though Matt Ryan was a very efficient thrower and the league's MVP that year, Charlton, he knows what cost him the game was not putting the ball on the ground and trusting the legs of Antonio Freeman and Coleman running the football.
Yeah.
If he had done that, Atlanta may have won the Super Bowl against the New England Patriots, but he stayed in the air. And if you think about when Garoppolo came to the 49ers, he won his first 5 starts. He was very efficient as a passer, and that's what got him on the go. Then all of a sudden he gets hurt in the 3rd game last year against the Kansas City Chiefs, and he was a very efficient passer at that time. They needed to develop a run game, and that's what they did with Mullen and Bessert playing quarterback. Mullins played better than Bessert, but they had to develop a running game because you had these 2 unproven quarterbacks, and that's what forced Kyle Shanahan to become more of a run-heavy coach than a pass-heavy coach. Even though they gave Garoppolo the big money, he said if we're going to win games and stay in games, we have to be able to run the ball.
Yeah, that's very true. And like you said, you learn from your past. The Chiefs, they do have a more dynamic offense. The 49ers do bring in one of the best pass rushing defenses. But just keeping this in mind, the only quarterback, and there may be a second one, but the only quarterback, there'll be 2 of them actually, 2 quarterbacks that the 49ers have faced that are even a resemblance to Mahomes would be Russell Wilson in Seattle. And both of those games came down to really the last play. The Seattle won it by, a kick, field goal in overtime. And also they stopped the Seahawks on the goal line, about the 3-inch line up in Seattle, because they could not stop Russell Houdini Wilson. Well, Patrick Mahomes to me is like Russell Wilson, like 2.0. A little bit faster, a little bit bigger, can make more dynamic runs, maybe a little bit better arm, a little bit younger, not afraid to take risk, Big C. And that, to me, if people want to see what's going to happen in this game, it's like the Seattle Seahawks with a little bit better quarterback. I'm not trying to throw shade at Wilson, but how would you rank up? You're a defensive guy. If you are a defensive guy, would you equate Wilson to Mahomes in any capacity? Big C, your thoughts?
I would not equate him in any capacity. Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes 1-0, and there's no other. There's no other quarterback that is dynamic in the NFL as Patrick Mahomes. He is the face of the NFL. He is what everybody wants to be. We thought 2 years ago when Deshaun Watson broke onto the scene in his rookie year that he would become the face of the NFL because he was setting records over the first 7 games prior to him getting hurt. When Patty Mahomes got an opportunity to play quarterback, everybody's like, wow. And Alex Smith said, I got to change my area code. And he did. That's how good Patrick Mahomes was after 1 start in Kansas City. Not only that, the Kansas City Chiefs moved up in the draft to get him because other teams they thought might draft him. They gave up players to get this young man. So when you think about Patrick Mahomes, he's done something in the NFL in his first 2 seasons as a starter. He started 31 games. Think about that during the regular season thus far in the NFL. Not a complete season a complete 2 seasons over 3 years. So no quarterback has ever seen the numbers he's had. 76 touchdowns in his first 2 in the NFL. He's averaging 2 touchdown passes every game that he plays. So when you think about those, that actually 3 touchdown passes every game that he plays, you think about those dynamic numbers. No quarterback has ever done that. He's led his team in rushing during the postseason. And they have very capable running backs. But that's the type of threat that he puts on everybody. You can't turn your back on him. What Patty Mahomes wants you to do is play man coverage.
Yeah.
You play man coverage against him, that's when he's going to pull the ball down and run.
Yeah.
That's how slick he is. He has design run. Russell Wilson had more design runs than him. But this guy keeps you so off-kilter defensively, and everyone talks about the pass rush of the 49ers. Think about the dynamic quarterbacks, and there's three of them that they played. You mentioned Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Kyler Murray gave them fits.
Yeah.
And the Arizona Cardinals have nothing on their offensive defensive line.
Yeah.
Kyler Murray gave them fits. It came down to the last possession in 2 games versus the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah.
The Baltimore Ravens, they lost to the Baltimore Ravens with Lamar Jackson. He's nowhere near the thrower that Patrick Mahomes is. So when you talk about a quarterback putting the ultimate pressure on a defense, ask the Tennessee Titans.
Yep.
And who was the first team that they played in the playoffs? The Chiefs. You know, the Patriots. No, it wasn't the Patriots, but the first team that they played in the playoffs. Ask
Houston.
The Houston
What type
Texans. Of pressure does Patrick Mahomes put on you?
Yeah, Houston Texans, when they got
the Houston Texans.
When they down, they outscored. They were 24-0. They were down. They outscored them 51-7 after being down 24-0. The 49ers, that's their Achilles heel. How do you stop a guy that can set you up with the run? He can set you up with the pass. He's a guy that's not trying to run out of bounds. I think when Garoppolo tried to do like Patrick Mahomes, that's when he had his knee blown out, a couple of seasons ago. They made it better and stronger with that knee brace, but he's not going to be a running threat against this team. They're going to have to use that 300 monster in the backfield, and that's going to be their best opportunity, in my opinion. Now, that's not saying the 49ers can't win. If they can pick off Mahomes a couple of times, then they have a chance. If they do what you said that Shanahan may have learned when they lost that 28-3 lead against New England. It was down in Atlanta. I believe it was in Atlanta in the Super Bowl.
It was in Houston.
Was it Houston? Okay, in Houston in the Super Bowl. And that was the game. It was like 2 games. Like one game was, oh my God, the Atlanta Falcons are amazing. And that's without a guy that could run in Ryan. But Ryan was trying to earn that contract. He got it anyway, the $155 million for giving up a 28-3 lead. It's amazing how he got the contract. But that was 2 games, and like you said, Shanahan will probably learn. The 49ers can win this game if they pick Mahomes a couple of times and they make this a running game, which is what Tennessee did in the first half. And then something happened to Tennessee's staff. They stopped believing they had a running back that was averaging 180 yards a game. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Kansas City took Derrick Henry out of the game in the first half. If you recall what the defense was doing, they were making the shifts into the plays. Tennessee was very predictable about how they were going to run from formation.
Yeah.
And if you do your homework in the playoffs, you're not going to trick anybody when it comes to running plays.
Right.
I know that the San Francisco 49ers have lived by the run plays, but when you think about that defensive front of the Kansas City Chiefs, they're very formidable against the run.
Yeah.
They may not be the best pass rushers, but they are a great run-stopping team. And that's what they proved against Derrick Henry. I see that same type of front coming up against the San Francisco 49ers. And now that you have Frank Clark healthy, you got to have some help coming off the edge. And Jones, I don't know if you can block Jones one-on-one in the middle. So when that combination of 2 linemen are in the game together and you're forced to pass, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have a lot of pressure on him. San Francisco is going to need to get a big game out of Deebo Samuel as well as Emmanuel Sanders. They're going to have a game. Everyone has talked about George Kittle, but he was limited to 1 reception in that game versus Green Bay. I don't know how healthy he is. I know he's been banged up late in the season. I think that Ryan Matthews can take Kerry Kittle out of the game defensively. He's good enough defensive back to play him man up, Charlton. So this is going to be a chess match the entire game when we get to next Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. There's always something I want to talk about in the second half of our program that's nefarious, too. So with the Chiefs' offense, they light up the scoreboard. It makes no sense in Las Vegas for the Chiefs to win. That's why I believe in shenanigans, and we know what shenanigans mean, Big C. Sometimes they do what they did to USC when they played Alabama down in Texas a couple years ago. They said, we're from the South. We believe it's... It was Southern hospitality, but every time the USC Trojans drank some of that Gatorade, they all felt sluggish, Big C. This time when they play this year, they're going to bring their own Gatorade. But the thing for the Chiefs offense, they light up the scoreboard, is when Jimmy Garoppolo they keep looking back to that game in New Orleans when they won it 48-46, a shootout over the Saints. But the Saints also, they've always had something happen to them. That thing with Minnesota, up in I think Diggs had the catch where the DB closed his eyes and Stephon Diggs grabbed the ball and he's like, what? I got the ball. No one touched me? Ran to the end zone for a touchdown. Then we know the Rams push off. That was egregious. The NFL let that happen. I still think that was a pushback on their coach, Big C, I think he was fined and kicked out of the league for a whole year because he had this targeting crap going on. People know that's true. They keep wondering, why is the NFL always screwing the Saints? Well, when you start targeting teams, you get punished for it. You can't expect favors. There was also a push-off again. Minnesota pushed off. I think it was Kyle Rudolph pushed off. So the Saints have always had something bad happen to them. So I'm not going to say you can look at that game. But if you can look at that game, the 49ers, would it be amazing to say that they would have to have that same kind of shootout to win? And I don't think they can against this team, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it showed the vulnerability of the 49er defense against a prolific passing offense.
Yeah.
And when you think about the receiving core in New Orleans, it's nowhere near what Kansas City possesses.
No.
You think about it, there were three big plays in that game that kept the 49ers in there.
Yeah.
There was a touchdown pass by Sanders, the receiver, to another receiver.
Yeah.
It wasn't Jimmy Garoppolo throwing that. And you think about the play that George Kittle started at the end of the game.
And ran 20 yards.
Where he took half the secondary on the boat ride down the sideline.
The cheap TVs.
Those plays right there, you're not going to get those plays from Kansas City. You're not going to trick them on a reverse pass by a cornerback. You're not going to get, a receiver pushing down a defensive back, and that play is not called in the Super Bowl on offensive interference, Charlton. So there were three plays that allowed the 49ers not to lose that game. And you're not going to get that same situation come Super Bowl Sunday. The 49ers, they were very fortunate in that shootout. But as you look at it, Jimmy Garoppolo did not keep pace with Drew Brees in that game when it came to quarterback passing.
No, he didn't. There's a guy on the 49ers that had a better weekend than your good old boy down south, and that's Raheem Mostert. He was bounced around the league, and he just kind of stuck it out. But the guy has a track speed, sprinter speed. When he rushed for 220 yards against Green Bay. Kansas City Chiefs defense a little bit better than Green Bay. I don't think they're any worse than Green Bay. He's not going to rush for 220 yards. But if he can tote the rock for about 100 yards, 110, 115 yards, and get Coleman involved, and just keep that same thing that they had going to get this far. Don't make it about Jimmy G. And when I come back on the second half, I want to ask you some questions about media. And the media wants to build up the quarterbacks that perhaps have a certain skin shade. And I know shenanigans happen. I know you don't believe in shenanigans like I do, Big C, but I tell you, I'm from California, everything goes, and I know a lot of good old boys from Texas, of all places. We'll take the Big C timeout. We'll come right back in just a moment. We're going to talk more about NFL football. You're going to love what we talk about in the second half. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause, and you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. The apps that I love are by Spreaker and also by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You are here. Welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV. You can follow Big C Sports on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs. You hear that? Smart all over the universe. Big C, how do we sound politically correct? What if someone has a dumb TV? They don't call it dumb as a euphemism. They'll just say, it's not a dumb TV, it's just not smart, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, in other words, they haven't upgraded to a QLED TV.
Yeah. Well, we gotta hopefully that people can get into that. It's always important that, and we love just having fun with that too. I want to get into there's a couple of awards that are out there, and there's always a room for more awards. It's nice to get the publicity, and people talk about that all the time. But some awards that come out is called the FedEx Player Cup Award, and ironically, one of the players that we've talked about, in fact, a couple of them, are up for it. You look at the great Patrick Mahomes with his 3,100 passing yards, Big C, his 20 touchdowns, actually 26 touchdowns. I don't want to. There should be an asterisk because he was missing a couple of games with that knee injury. Lamar Jackson, 36 passing touchdowns and 113 passer rating. The great Russell Houdini Wilson, 4,100 yards passing, 31 touchdowns. And then you got the guy down south that you good old boys love, Derrick Henry out of Alabama, 1,540 rushing yards. Christian McCaffrey out of Stanford, 2,392 yards from scrimmage. And then there's another guy that Cleveland forgot was on their team because he sure does not make as many commercials as that good old boy quarterback they have down there. But Nick Chubb, 1,494 rush yards. Big C, he played in 2 fewer games than Derrick Henry, but Derrick Henry only leads them by about 60 yards, actually by about 55 yards in performance, Big C. Chubb is really, yard for yard, better running back than Henry, but their coach did not know it, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's about marketing in the NFL, and when you think about those 6 players that you named off, Charlton, 5 of them are African-American.
Yeah.
It's ironic that the face of the NFL has become African-American, and when you talked about the 3 quarterbacks, you have 3 quarterbacks that are African-American that are being touted as the 3 top quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah.
My, how times have changed over the last 10 years when you look at that. And when you look at it, only one of those quarterbacks, Charlton, was taken, early in the first round. Patrick Mahomes at a 10th pick. Lamar Jackson went as a 32nd. Russell Wilson went in the 3rd round. So a lot of people didn't think that they were franchise quarterbacks. You think about Patty Mahomes, best quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
9 teams passed on him. Mitch Trubisky went before he did, and people are still have the jury out on Mitch Trubisky. Every team passed on Russell Wilson twice, seems like.
Crazy.
And some even 3 times before he was drafted. And yet he's been to 2 Super Bowls. Patrick Mahomes is going to his first. We know Lamar Jackson potentially should get there within the next couple of years, but this is how the times have changed in the NFL. We look at those running backs. It's always been dominated by black running backs in the NFL. Christian McCaffrey had a breakout year with overall yards, but he's not the workhorse that a Derrick Henry or a Nick Chubb is.
Yeah, that's amazing. I want to bring up something, too, because it's just real, and people don't have to like it. Just like the USC Trojans, they didn't like that Gatorade you guys from Alabama gave to them, Big C. It made them all sleepy, and that's why they want the rematch. It's going down in Texas this year, Big C, 2020, and they're bringing their own Gatorade, the Trojans, Big C. Patrick Mahomes should have been in the Super Bowl last year. We could talk about what happened with the coaching staff of the New Orleans Saints because they considered bounty hunters. Remember that, Big C? They were bounty gate is what they called it. The NFL knew they were targeting guys, and Sean Payton said, "Sean, cry crocodile tears all you want. You know what you did." Now, we know from the Tuck rule. This is me and I'm California. I told you I'm cynical. The Tuck rule was about getting the New England Patriots and Tom Brady and the Kraft into the Super Bowl. We all know that they had the America's colors. They had all the things going for them. So Tom Brady even later admitted, I think you said, that it was a fumble, even though they thought it was an incomplete pass at the time. Last year, the same thing happened with Kansas City. Tom Brady, because he's the NFL's, paragon of virtue, he's their prodigal son, they wanted him to get back to the Super Bowl. That was a phony, a phantom call against Kansas City, a fake pass interference or roughing the passer where someone touched Tom Brady on the shoulder pass and gave him a first down, and the rest is history. I don't want to see that happen again in this Super Bowl, Big C. Am I naive, or does that make any sense?
Well, they've made it to the Super Bowl, Charlton. They've gotten it past the championship game. This is a game that's going to be decided on the field. I don't see that the officials will have a major play in this game. The stage is too big, and we haven't seen a Super Bowl yet where officials have been dictating the outcome of the game. It's been all left up to the players.
Really? Did you see the Rams and the Saints game? Do you think the Saints agree with that after the Rams fiasco with the?
But that wasn't in the Super Bowl. That was in the playoffs. When we've gotten to the Super Bowl, the officials have kind of kept their hands out of the mix in the Super Bowl.
That's interesting. I mean, that's an opinion that people can have. But I want to ask you this question because there's always this talk about the quarterback thing, and this comes from people behind closed doors. And sometimes it slips out in the public. But can he really? Does he really have the smarts for it? Is he intelligent enough to play the game? And one of the euphemisms, like the guy in the department store, he said, "We have these smart TVs," and I said, "Well, what are those other TVs? What do you call them?" And he said, "Oh, we're just trying to phase those out. They call them dumb TVs." So when someone says this guy has a great football IQ, that's like the department store guy saying, "Oh, this is the smart TV, but that's the dumb TV over there." They always want to consider, my opinion, when they look at African Americans, you can watch it in basketball. You may even hear it coming up. You may even hear it some in football. This guy has a great football IQ. They don't want to say this guy's intelligent, like they don't call Eric Bieniemy the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs. They don't even mention his name. It's like Andy Reid. So do you think the media would rather see Jimmy Garoppolo, because he's more mainstream looking, than Patrick Mahomes win a Super Bowl so he can have him go off to Disneyland? Big, say your thoughts.
Well, no, if you're talking about it from a media perspective, Charlton, everybody wants to see Patrick Mahomes win the game. When you think about what he means, he is that marketable individual already. He's running commercials on television. He's the second most publicized quarterback in the NFL on television. You don't see Jimmy Garoppolo being that face, Charlton. He's not going to carry the torch, even if the San Francisco 49ers win the Super Bowl. He's not that marketable because he'll always have that shadow of New England hanging over his head. He has the 2 Super Bowl rings already from New England. He's been the quarterback for the 49ers, the number 4 media market in the U.S., yet you don't see him on any national stage, Charlton, being a spokesperson other than there in that regional market.
Yeah.
Patty Mahomes is what's going to be carrying the NFL for the next decade. Everybody's aware of that. Every media outlet is aware of that. Everybody in the NFL is aware of that. The players want him to be the face of the league because of the attention. Patrick Mahomes is the Steph Curry of the NFL, and where Steph Curry is the NBA.
Yeah.
They were must-see television for 5 years because of Steph Curry. He changed the dynamics of how young men played basketball, how everybody looked at going out onto the court. I no longer care about dunking. I want to knock it down from 3.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes has created that type of mantra in the NFL and across the wave of football from the youth on up in America, is that everybody who plays quarterback wants to be Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. Let me get your thoughts then. If it's Madison Avenue, we talked about how, maybe things have changed somewhat, but I still think that there's still a slight edge when it comes to media calling guys football smart as opposed to smart, or just like Eric Bieniemy, just ignoring his name all along. They don't even mention him. It's like they rarely even mention the guy that has the most dynamic offense in the NFL. And to me, I'm a bit sensitive to that. Maybe I should get over that, but to me, I see it that way, and I think it's media related. So when we talk about these quarterbacks, whether it is a Patrick Mahomes, we know Russell Wilson has as much money. Russell Wilson has as much money as anybody, so it doesn't really affect him. But the Dak Prescott deal, the Lamar Jackson deal, a lot of people still say they want to find a way for them to fail. Unlike Matthew Stafford in Detroit, they want to find a way for him to win. He's never won anything. They want to find a way for guys like Andy Dalton to win. They really want Kirk Cousins to win. There are some people saying Kirk Cousins finally won a game. It wasn't him. It was their defense that helped them win. That's how they got over on the good old boys down in New Orleans. Like a lot of people have gotten over on New Orleans. But they really want to hear that. Are you saying you think it's even now that race is not a factor when it comes to Madison Avenue promoting skin color on quarterbacks? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Patrick Mahomes, as I said, he has more national commercials than any other quarterback in the NFL, and he's an African American. He has more he has as many national commercials as Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has one product that he endorses, State Farm.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes also endorses that product, State Farm. Why did Aaron Rodgers get that? Because he was the guy that you wanted with the ball with the last 2 minutes. He was that superstar quarterback that everybody wanted to be like. All of a sudden, the gravitas of Patrick Mahomes joining him on that commercial of State Farms, everyone understands what Patrick Mahomes brings to the NFL, and State Farm wants to be out in front of it. Not only that, he has a Heinz 57 commercial, Charlton, so he's doing ketchup commercials because he loves ketchup on his steak. I don't know what's wrong with the boy. Maybe we need to send him in for some psychiatric evaluation for ketchup on steak.
Maybe it's smart ketchup.
California thing or something, because I know y'all grow a lot of tomatoes out there. But when you think about that and you look at where it's going, Russell Wilson has commercials.
Yeah.
So he's become Madison Avenue. He's become marketable. So when you look at that, advertising wants to surround itself with a winner.
Yeah.
That's what they look at. They look at winners. It's not about color anymore. It's who are people attracted to. Does Patrick Mahomes turn more dials than Jimmy Garoppolo on a television set? Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Does Steph Curry turn more dials on a television set than James Harden?
Yeah.
And he's the leading scorer in the NBA.
Yeah.
So it's about who's turning the dial. That's where advertisers want to hitch their wagon to.
Yeah. I think Tiger Woods did the same thing before they created that fiasco for him doing what his Caucasian brethren are doing too, from the JFKs all the way through all the former presidents. They've all done the same old thing that Tiger Woods lost $100 million in sponsorship for doing. So Super Bowl, think about this, Super Bowl 54, it will feature 2 of the top 10 defensive teams in the postseason in the NFL. But this is about Kansas City's offense versus the 49ers defense, in my opinion. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think both defenses come into this game on an equal plane, Charlie,
Really?
because they both have to get after the opposing quarterback.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do defensively. You have to stymie the opposing quarterback. Kansas City is just as capable a running team as San Francisco. What you saw from Mostert in that game, Charlton, that was a once-in-a-lifetime game against an inept Green Bay Packer defense. Show me 5 players on the defense of the Green Bay Packers last week that were willing to make a tackle. That was something that they didn't not want to do. I'm watching most outrun cornerbacks. They're giving up the angle. You know where he's heading to the sideline.
Oh, you know it.
You let him get there instead of heading to the cutoff point.
Yeah.
That's fundamental football you learn in Pop Warner, how to cut off the angles. And if you haven't learned it by high school, then you're not going to be playing.
Yeah.
The Green Bay Packers did not want to play defense against the San Francisco 49ers. They were just happy to be in that game.
Yeah.
They didn't have it offensively from their quarterback. He looked shell-shocked going into the game. Looked like he was concussed every time you looked into his eyes.
Yeah.
And then the defense just was not getting after anybody. They left it all in Green Bay after that game with Seattle.
Yeah. Well, that's very true. You know how Bill Walsh, back in the day, he would script his first 15 plays, allegedly. Maybe he scripted his first 20, but he told people 15. So when the guys were spying on him, like the Houston Astros were doing to the Dodgers, they didn't get the final 5 plays that helped them win. So first 15 plays, I want to get your thoughts. Would you agree with this? And it's just my opinion. Do you think the first 15 plays of the Super Bowl should determine the outcome of the game? Because at this time, we're creatures of habit. You don't start changing the flavor of Kool-Aid that you drink, and you don't change the date that you took to the dance. Big C, your thoughts?
Oh, I think it most definitely will determine the outcome of the game, Charlton, because it's going to give one of the teams an upper hand. And I feel the team that wins will score within those first 15 plays of the game, potentially score twice, Charlton, because you're going to see teams come out and they're not going to sit back and try to play conservative, especially from a 49ers perspective. They cannot be conservative in this game. I know they want to keep Patrick Mahomes on the bench. They don't want him on the game because this is a guy that can score in 2 or 3 plays. He doesn't need a 9-play drive, holding the ball for 7 minutes to get into the end zone.
Yeah.
And that's what the 49ers are aware of. So it's going to be very critical on how they script that first 15 plays of the game to keep Patrick Mahomes on the bench.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to transition to something because we were talking about media, and we're not just 2 jocks that yell at each other. I'm right, you're wrong. No, you're right, I'm wrong. No, I'm right, you're wrong. Let me tell you why you're wrong. I don't like when people get each other into an intelligent dialogue and they try to tear each other down by showing how erudite they are by making the other guy look stupid. I don't want to do that. I like men who can create something. And as we talk about media, and we talked the other day about Doug Williams doing some type of an interview with Peyton Manning. Now, Doug Williams is the one who had 5 touchdown passes in the Super Bowl when the Redskins beat the Broncos back in the day. Peyton Manning's never thrown 5 touchdowns in the Super Bowl, Big C, but he's the one with all the TV commercials. There's a comedian, and I guess a business owner by the name of Byron Allen. He acquired 11 TV stations for about $290 million. That's back in October of 2019. He's African-American. And as we talk about the Madison Avenue thing, and as you brought up, Patrick Mahomes makes a lot of TV commercials. He's more than just what they say. He has a high football IQ. The man's very intelligent. Russell Wilson. A lot of guys are when they give him a chance. We even have the quarterback, Dak Prescott. He does chunky soup. how many other African Americans have TV commercials? I'm sure there's some. Cam Newton may have some, but I'm not sure if there's a lot of them that do. So let me juxtapose something. Most of the times, we say the media will or the media won't let us do something. Byron Allen, as a comedian businessman, and his company is Entertainment Studios that purchased 11 TV stations, $290 million, just back in October of 2019. And his broadcasting division has acquired the broadcast television stations from USA Television Holdings, LLC, and USA Television Mid-American Holdings, LLC, which includes network affiliations like ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox. Just like Big C Sports, I'd love to have $290 million, Big C. How do you equate that type of business compared to what people think about when it comes to sports? They would not call him he has a high football IQ. They say he's a very intelligent businessman. Your thoughts?
Well, it was great that Byron Allen could acquire that, but it's small potatoes when you look at what Tyler Perry has done down in the Atlanta market. Tyler Perry purchased the Tyler Perry Studios, where he purchased an old Army base for $1 billion last year in the Atlanta area. And everybody is aware of Tyler Perry from the Medea series.
He's amazing.
That he has from movies that he produces and the whole series and television shows. He has right now several different projects that play on network television, Charlton. So when you think about movie moguls and television moguls, Tyler Perry has set the benchmark. Tyler Perry at one point was homeless about 3 decades ago. This young man was homeless. Now he's one of the most wealthy and notable television production people in America and movie moguls. So when you think about what African Americans have done, Tyler Perry has set the benchmark. He just said, I will go and build my own studio.
Yeah.
Not only that, everyone saw the Miss Universe pageant.
Yeah.
That was held at Tyler Perry Studios in Atlanta. So Tyler Perry has been in the forefront of showing African Americans what you can do through adversity. Don't sit there and say, I don't have a chance. Like I said, this man was homeless 3 decades ago, and now he's one of the wealthiest Americans in the country.
That's amazing, and I love the fact that you brought that story up, because I don't want to just be somebody, that talks about who won a game. And when you bring up Tyler Perry's story, I know a lot of people know the Medea series. I think he's just an incredibly, let me say what mainstreamers say about Tyler Perry, Big C. He has a high movie IQ. The man's a brilliant person, a brilliant businessman. So I want to tell you something that Alan's doing before I run back into sports, because it's dominated by black men. They saw an opening. They ran through it. They didn't wait for someone to give it. They ran through it. If you think about Byron Allen also, he's partnered with Sinclair Broadcast Group to acquire 21 regional sports networks. And part of that is Walt Disney Fox Corporation as well. And what I want to do with Big C Sports is grow as high as the universe will allow our minds to take us, Big C. It's not about waiting for a Caucasian man to say, let me get back to you. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I'm sure that's some of everything in corporation, in corporate America. You've owned a lot of businesses yourself. But what I really want to make Big C Sports about too, I don't want to get on and argue about who's smarter and what player is bigger, stronger, and faster. Because what you just said about Tyler Perry, I did not know the whole story. And I'm not saying that he makes it possible for everybody. But what do you think has driven you to succeed when you hung up the football cleats, Big C? Your thoughts?
What has driven me to succeed, Charlton, is not wanting to fail. Even being an athlete, what drove me as an athlete was not wanting to fail, not feeling that anybody was better than me. And I think that's the shortcoming of anybody in life, regardless of race or culture, is that you're always feeling that somebody is better than you. You set the limits of what your life can be, regardless of whether it's in life, whether it's in sports. And I had a guy tell me, about last year, told me that I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth.
Yeah.
I told him, no, I wasn't, because I had 2 parents. That was the only silver spoon in my house, that I got. And I don't know if it was silver. It might have been, stainless steel. Yeah. I don't think we had silver spoons. They were stainless steel.
Right.
But there were 7 kids living in a 2-bedroom house, 1 bathroom. So if people want to call that a silver spoon, I went to college on a scholarship, not because my parents could afford it, but that scholarship was afforded because my parents forced me to get good grades in school. And those good grades, as well as having some athletic ability, equated into a scholarship.
Yeah.
that led to the opportunity to play professional football, Charlton.
Yeah.
So by my parents instilling in me that being a failure was not an option.
No.
That was my driving force. My parents, they said, you can't fail because we got you here and we're going to make sure we be an ally to you to go out and become a better asset to yourself. And that was my driving force.
Yeah, that's incredible. I want to tie in this thing that Alan, Alan's successful businessman, he filed a $20 billion lawsuit against Comcast in addition to a $10 billion suit against Charter Communications. The case is still dealing with some other issues, but it was based on racial bias. He was a smart comedian, what they call, he's a high IQ, he has a high comedian IQ, he's a businessman. But this is what I want other people of color to know also. Mainstream already knows this. But sometimes you got to sue people because the courts are the ultimate fair play if you have the right attorney. And sometimes even if you don't have the right attorney, the court and a good judge can adjudicate the law. There are times when people will rob you or deny you opportunity. It happens to everybody. So part of Alan is not just sitting back saying, well, they won't let us have nothing. They won't let me on Comcast. They won't let me with Charter Communication. He filed a lawsuit, $20 billion with a B, a lot more money than what Tyler Perry paid for the studio down in Atlanta. So there's always a way to skin a cat, Big C. I would hope that we can go on into 2020, talk more about what things are done behind the scenes and not just about how big and fast somebody is. And I know we're not like that, but we do some of it. We do some of all of it. But I want to get your thoughts on that too. The law oftentimes is the best panacea, not complaining, not marching into the streets, march down to the courthouse and file a lawsuit, and that gets people's attention. That make any sense, Big C, your thoughts?
But you're not going to go into a $20 billion lawsuit saying I got $1,000 in my pocket hiring an attorney.
Right.
An attorney, if you're filing a $20 billion lawsuit, you're going to have $1 million in capital to be able to afford that attorney and the litigation that you're going to go through. And so that gives him a different mantra than anybody else. I mean, it's easy to sue anybody.
Yeah.
But the amount of money that you sue somebody is based on the financial representation you can get from an attorney's perspective. So it's not easy to say, okay, I'm going to throw a $5 million lawsuit on somebody. You're going to have grounds and precedents, and that law firm is going to have to do a lot of research.
Yeah.
And they're not going to do it pro bono.
Yeah.
You're going to have to put up some money up front to guarantee that they're going to get something out of that. So it's not as easy as it sounds just by putting a $20 billion lawsuit on somebody, because everybody would do that when they have a grievance with someone else.
Very well said. He did get some help from the activists, a part of the NAACP. But I just wanted to bring that part into today's show because I know we talk about media, and I know we talk about how people can own things. And ownership is powerful. And I love bringing that part to Big C Sports and not just talking about what guy won a game or is Tiger Woods going to win, the Open down at Torrey Pines. Tiger Woods allegedly worth almost $1 billion, but he keeps a lot of his stuff private, and that's his own choice too. I just want to make sure that what we do on our program is a way to lead people into seeing what else is available. I want to cross back over to the world of sports, and we have some things going on down in Australia. I know they're having issues with the fires, and our thoughts and prayers are with that as well, Big C. But tonight, the Australian Open, Coco Gauff, African American, number 3 ranked. She takes on Naomi Osaka. They face off tonight on the ladies' side, and again, our hearts and thoughts and prayers are with the people of Australia. But what a great tennis match this should be, Big C. Your thoughts?
These two young ladies are going to become rivals in the years to come. When you think about Coco Gauff's rise to stardom at Wimbledon last year, and then she faced Naomi Osaka, who was the number 3 ranked women's player in the world in the U.S. Open in New York and Flushing Meadows, and she was knocked out in the semifinal rounds. They face each other once again tonight in the Australia Open, Charlton, and this should be another one of those epic matches between these two young ladies.
It should be another one of those matches. One of the biggest rivalries in women's college basketball has been renewed tonight after 12 years, number 3 versus number 23. That's 4,765 days since the last matchup was January 6, 2007. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's the UConn Lady Huskies against Lady Volunteers down in Tennessee, Charlton. 25 years ago, these ladies kicked off the most fierce rival in women's basketball between Pat Summitt and Gino Auriemma. Unfortunately, we lost Pat Summitt a few years ago to cancer. But when you think about the great ladies that have played in this rivalry, Charlton, some of the greatest names in women's college basketball. And for a decade, these two teams either played for number one or the national championships. Every time that they met, there was something significant on the line in women's college hoops. And this was the greatest rivalry that we've ever seen on the ladies' side of college basketball.
Yeah, we look for all these great things happening in sports. Tonight's NBA basketball, Big C style, Washington Wizards at the Cleveland Cavaliers, LA Lakers at the New Jersey Nets, the Dallas Mavericks at the Portland Trail Blazers. Really looking forward to what happens on the hoop scene. I know Zion Williamson, a lot of hoopla made over what happened with him last night. Didn't do so well in the first half. The second half, he turned it around, and I really appreciate seeing the growth of Zion Williamson. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on my two favorite apps called Google and Alexa. Just say Google. Or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. You can also follow Big C Sports on Comcast, Xfinity Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and most importantly, a lot of smart TVs all over the universe, Big C. I just love so much going on in the world of sports. Back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I want to give a shout-out to Zion Williams for having his NBA debut last night. He did some things that kept everybody excited. You think about it, he only played 22 minutes, but he had 17 points in that 22 minutes. He was able to knock down 4 consecutive three-point shots.
Yep.
The most he ever knocked down in a game at Duke was 3.
Yeah.
So if he can keep playing on those lines, Charlton, he's going to be one of the budding superstars of the league over the next few years to come.
Yeah, he will be. I love what we do with Big C Sports. I love the talk of Byron Allen and the talk of Tyler Perry. You know, Oprah Winfrey, she owns the old network, because she was trying to get some network done, and they said no. I know you're wonderful, Oprah, but no, you're messing with my money now. So she started her own network. I remember when you and I started Big C Sports, we had a similar thing. We had some people say, well, you know, maybe you guys are trying to do too much. Even though the network that we were with started doing Monday Night Football in Northern California, they had never done that in 44 years. So we do our own thing. Now we have a lot of platforms. I would like to be like Tyler Perry. I want $1 billion, Big C. Everybody wants something. I hope that we're all healthy, wealthy, and wise. As we close, Big C, I just want to ask you your thought in the final 30 seconds. What do you think people should focus on? Love our sports, but also love something outside of sports, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you focus on life. You focus on getting better every day, regardless of that. And I mean, when you put the focus on yourself and not concerned about what others' thoughts are and what others may think of you, then you can put all the energy into your own development.
That's very well said, and that's why we wish people to be healthy, wealthy, and wise. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports every Monday through Friday, and when you do, always know this. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.